And we are back. How's it going? Today we're going to talk about something exhilarating and fun. Cave trapping. Ever wanted to go in a cave and get trapped? Well, here's some stories on that matter. Let's begin. The Mossdale Cavern disaster. John Octon and then 5 of his friends, must be really good friends, were about 2 miles deep into an unmapped part of England's Mossdale Caverns in 1967 when the rain began to fall. For hours they climbed and crawled their way through the darkness, winding tunnels of the cave, exploring a part of the world no one has ever seen before. I'm sure it was well worth it. Deep in the labyrinth of stone, they had no way of knowing what was coming. In the downpour, the creek outside of the mountain was rising. Soon there was a full-on flood, like when you have to pee, but there's no gas station. The entrance was buried under a rising lake, and the water came rushing into the cave through every point. Ogden and his group were crawling through a narrow tunnel when they heard the rumble of rushing water behind them. It spilled in, rising over their feet and quickly up to their neck. The group's only hope was a small crack in the rocks up ahead. Ogden forced himself up to the fissure, pulling his head into the tiny pocket of air at the top. Only Ogden was able to get in there because there was no other room for the other people. His friends died. Ogden stayed in the darkness, treading water until he eventually died as well. Another one, cave beneath Pocton Bay. In 2002, divers found MK's body at the bottom of an underwater cave in Croatia, about 177 feet below. He was alone, but his diving mask had been removed, with a 12-inch knife into his chest. At first, the police investigated it as a murder. MK had gone diving with friends, and the police began to suspect one of his friends stabbing him before they left the cave. Forensics eventually revealed that his murder was actually a suicide. MK had gotten lost in the maze of the cave and his oxygen ran out. With no air left, he started drowning. He swam up to get some air bubbles between the 2 rocks and tried to breathe it in, but with no help with the air bubbles. This is not Sonic, unfortunately. Being scared of drowning, he decided to stab himself in the chest. Thankfully, he died. Otherwise, he would have bled out and drowned. Double whammy. Another one is Peter Vrostra was a risk taker, for sure. When he and his friends went cave diving through Strafsansi Caves in South Africa. I apologize, I butchered that. I'm probably for sure on that one. In 1984, he ignored every safety guideline, though there's a line through the water when you're supposed to follow. But Peter's curiosity kept driving him to explore passages beneath the path, or off the beaten path. But Peter wanted to go off the beaten path, so he kept going even though there was no rope to follow. The 3rd time he did so, his friends couldn't find him as he kept going. Peter swam through a maze of tunnels and soon realized he was lost. He was trapped alone in a cave with no idea how to get out. His oxygen was running low as well. In a stroke of luck, he found a small island at the end of the tunnel. He climbed out of the water and onto the island. Now at least he wouldn't drown, but with oxygen getting low, his only hope was for rescuers to get him. Peter waited for hours before he gave into exhaustion. When he woke up, no help had come. It took rescuers 6 weeks to find Peter. By then, his starved body was nothing but skeleton. He left a final message scrawled out on the wall for his wife and his mom. It read, "I love you, Cheryl and Ma." In 2005, Dave Shaw was determined to find Dion Dreyer's body and retrieve it. He had been dead for 10 years and lost about 885 feet below the surface in South Africa's Bushman Hole, which is a curious name, bush and a hole, but you know, Bushy Man's Hole is what I read. Dave was going to bring his bones back to his family. He found Dion's body without a problem and hooked a line so it could bring it up safely. When he tried to cover the body with a bag, the head snapped clean off. The body started to float away and catching it turned into a vicious struggle. Dave's breath sped up. Soon he was breathing faster than his rehabilitator could handle. The carbon dioxide it was supposed to filter out was coming back into his lungs, making him confused. His efforts to get Dion into the bag were getting wild and careless. After 5 minutes, Dave gave up and started swimming up, but his leg got snagged onto the cave line he attached to Dion's body. Dave tried to get free, but Dion's body was dragging him down. He panicked, his breath faster than ever. Dave was choking on his own breath. Dave passed out and died underwater with Dion, true friend. Ryan Schultz had been trying to save John Jones for 19 hours already that fateful day in 2010. John had gotten himself trapped headfirst upside down in a narrow passageway. That makes it a lot worse when you're stuck in a cave, head going downward, but he was trapped in Utah's Nutty Putty Cave. Ryan and his team were doing everything they could to get him out. While his men built a pulley system meant to yank John out, Ryan stayed with him, talking to him to keep him calm. "I'm sorry I'm so fat," John said. "It would be so much easier for you guys to get me out of here if I wasn't so fat," he also said. And I would say it'd be easier if they brought some butter, but whatever. Ryan promised that he'd be his workout buddy when he finally got out. For now, the pulley was in place and they was going to start pulling him. John needed to get ready. When they yanked up, John shrieked in pain. They gave him a break, Ryan talked him through it, and then they pulled again. This time through, things got worse. A natural arch through which the rope was fed shattered and the rope broke. A metal carabiner fell and hit Ryan in the face, causing him to bite his tongue in half, and John fell back down the hole. Ryan had to get out. While blood dripped out of his mouth, he promised John that he'd be back for him. Ryan's team helped him escape from the collapsing cave, and Ryan's father went to take over for him. "We're going to get him out," he said, while the man was still trapped inside. But John was already unconscious. He would never wake up again. What a way to sleep. Kentuckian Floyd Collins found Crystal Cave in 1917. He was determined to explore every inch of it, not every centimeter or foot, every inch. For 8 years, he squeezed through its passageways until the day he got trapped. His lantern had started to flicker and Collins was trying to get out before he lost light. He was climbing his way up the tight passageway when he knocked a 27-pound rock loose. It came crashing down on his ankle, pinning him in place. For the next 17 days, rescuer teams tried to save him, but nothing they tried worked. In time, they brought in miners to dig a shaft to him, believing the only hope was to make a new way out. While he waited, Collins was becoming a celebrity. Tourists from all around the world came to see the rescuers. They set up booths to sell food and drinks. The mine shaft took too long. On the 18th day, Collins succumbed to hypothermia, thirst, and hunger. That must be treacherous if he can smell the food stands outside of the cave, but here's a Cave Creek disaster. A group of 17 students who visited New Zealand's Cave Creek in 1995 didn't think they were doing anything dangerous. They weren't exploring narrow passageways. They were on a guided tour, staying on a beaten path designed for tourists. When they made it to a platform that overlooked a chasm, some of the boys couldn't help but notice how flimsy it felt. As a joke, they jumped and shook it, marveling at how precautious it seemed to be built. They figured it was all fun. In an era of safety regulations, they assumed that it just looked flimsy, and it really was. But they weren't wrong. The platform had been built by men with no experience in engineering. It was meant to be bolted in place, but they only had nails instead, simply because they didn't have a drill handy. Under the weight of the students, the platform gave away. It toppled over and collapsed, crashing down in the chasm below. One student survived by grabbing onto the handrail and riding it down, but his classmates were hurtled overboard and killed. Out of the 17 people, only one survived. In 1988, Andrew White was on a team of 15 people exploring one of the deepest caves in the world. They would never see the bottom, unfortunately. A freak storm hit, a flood of water poured through the cave entrance, and the middle section of the entire cave collapsed. All 15 were trapped underground, with White and a few others stuck on a small ledge. It was hard to know what to do. The roof was getting ready to collapse, but the rushing water below was becoming more wild to enter. Boulders would fall off the cave walls and into the water, threatening to crush anyone who dared to step in. White decided to try it. He swam through the water and managed to find another way out. Over the next 27 hours, he and other workers sent in line and led his team out. That's one of the only happy cases that we're going over today, so you're welcome. Helena Carl was warned not to go into the Nam Tula cave in October of 2007. It was Thailand's rainy season, and there was heavy rain. If she went in, the locals warned her to not go in, otherwise she wouldn't return. Helena, though, ignored the warnings. She wasn't alone, though. Her boyfriend, John Collin, joined her, along with 7 other tourists who didn't see the risk. They soon realized the magnitude of their mistake. First, they heard a sudden roar, and then a wall of water started to rush in behind them. John and I started climbing, Helena recalled. The first thing we saw was the tour guide and the German boy being dragged away, then the Swiss couple and their 2 lovely girls. Helena nearly slipped, but John caught her and helped her up to a ledge. It was pitch black in there, but they could hear the incredible speed of the rushing water below them. "If we stay here, we're going to die," John told her. He thought he could swim for help and bring back a rescue team. Helena stayed behind as he climbed into the water. She watched as the love of her life was pulled away under the water. Helena was alone on the ledge for about 8 hours before rescue came. When they brought her out, the bodies of the others were lying in boxes on the grass. She saw John's body lying next to the Swiss girls. It was only then when she realized she was the only survivor. Last but not least, Kai Kenskin was one of the last divers to go in Norway's Plura Cave. It was a cold winter day in February of 2014, and the pond that led in the cave had froze over. The divers had to cut a hole in the ice before diving in. Patrick Gonvix and Jari went in first, and Kai's group followed after. The plan was to swim through the pathways of Plura and come out on the other side where there was an exit in the mountainside. Kai had already made it most of the way when he found Harsh's body. His friend had gotten trapped in a narrow passageway. In his panic, he swallowed water and choked. Now Jari's lifeless body was blocking the way forward. Jari, one of the men with Kai, panicked. He started breathing too quickly and poisoned himself with carbon dioxide. So in these situations, if you're ever trapped in a cave, keep calm with your breath, otherwise you'll die of carbon dioxide poisoning instead of scared to death. Kai tried to save him by calming him down, but he couldn't. Jari was the next to die and left Kai alone. Kai turned back. He swam through the freezing water and back to the pond, but he couldn't find the hole that he made. He had no choice to smash his way through the ice, blocking his way to the surface. By the time he was out, Kai had been underwater for 11 hours. The other men in his group had made it to the exit and survived. It would take nearly 2 months through for the bodies of his friends to be retrieved. Well, wasn't that a fun list of excitement? Would you ever be in a cave and go cave diving? I certainly wouldn't. I'd rather jump out of an airplane or jump from outer space. Thank you. Hope this wasn't too terrifying. Have a great one. Bye.